I took care of my sister's 3 kids after she left them. Now they're giving me money to thank me, but she is very angry and wants the money back. Hello, I'm a 48-year-old woman, and I have a younger sister, Diana, who is 46. We didn't get along well as kids. She was often pretentious and quite mean to me, leading us to drift apart once we reached high school. While I pursued college, Diana chose to move in with her boyfriend, who was wealthy enough to cover her living expenses, something our parents could never have afforded. Diana made it clear to our parents that she didn't care for their opinions and would live her life her way, so they didn't intervene and let her be. By 20, Diana had twin girls and a year later, a boy. Although our parents were happy for her, there was a concern about her lack of a job and how dependent she was on her boyfriend's money to maintain her lifestyle. Diana never married her boyfriend, which I believe was a mistake because it meant she wasn't entitled to alimony. After they split up, Diana discovered he had been cheating on her. Thankfully, he provided child support, though he chose to relinquish his parental rights, leaving Diana to raise her children alone. At that time, the girls were 3 years old, and her son was just 2. From then on, Diana was on her own, struggling to support herself and her kids, needing all the help she could get. Despite our strained relationship, I felt compelled to help Diana because of our parents. At that time, I was earning a decent salary. While it wasn't enough to fully support her and her children, I was able to contribute a small amount each month, along with our parents, to help them get by. The first few months were incredibly tough for Diana. Without a degree or any experience, she had to start from scratch and work her way up, which meant dedicating a significant amount of time to her jobs if she wanted to advance quickly. However, this was challenging because she had to consider her children's needs and couldn't simply leave them at home. Hiring a babysitter was an option, but it was costly, so she relied on me and her friends for help. Our parents were also working and contributing what they could, so they couldn't stay home. As for me, I had my own responsibilities, and Diana didn't have friends who could help with childcare, as they all had their own lives and jobs. None of them were willing to take on such a responsibility. Consequently, Diana was stuck in a minimum wage job, adjusting her hours to ensure she could return home quickly and minimize babysitter costs. The cost of childcare was prohibitively expensive, and Diana couldn't afford it, so this situation persisted for several years. Over time, I believe Diana started resenting her children, viewing them as the main obstacles to her success. She often blamed them for holding her back. I would visit occasionally, not out of any desire to mend things with Diana, but to ensure the children were okay. Despite our strained relationship, I wasn't heartless enough to let innocent kids suffer because of their mother's poor choices. My parents and I regularly checked on the children, and they frequently complained about Diana's harsh treatment. She would scold them for trivial matters and lash out at them just for being kids and wanting to have fun. It was a miserable existence for everyone involved. I wished I could help them, take them out of that house, and care for them myself, but I had no legal right to do so as she was their mother, and she was receiving child support from her ex and doing her best to make ends meet. While I felt some sympathy for Diana, my heart ached more for the children. Things worsened when she started seeing other men. Whenever a relationship failed, she would blame her kids, further straining their lives. Diana seemed to believe that her boyfriends would always break up with her once they discovered she had 3 children. I think this was because she never mentioned her kids on the first few dates, only revealing it after a month or 2 of dating. Keeping such a significant secret for that long when you're a single mother seems dishonest and odd to me. I tried to explain this to her multiple times, but she was convinced that her relationships ended solely because of her children. She'd often tormented them with tales of how their father had abandoned her and would threaten to leave them behind if they didn't behave. The children were terrified, and their childhood was overshadowed by their mother's narcissism. This toxic pattern persisted for years. I frequently thought about taking the children and running away to protect them, but I couldn't. I also couldn't file for custody or report her, as her behavior, though harmful, didn't meet the threshold for having her children removed from her care. The situation continued, and the kids were grateful to have me there, as my parents were too old to be of much help as friends. I was always available whenever they needed support. They couldn't turn to their mother with their problems, so they came to me instead. Whether it was issues at school, struggles with their studies, or conflicts with Diana, they always sought my help, and I cherished that trust. So it wasn't a surprise when they turned 18 and chose to leave their mother's house to live with me. Once they were legally adults, they had the freedom to decide where and with whom they wanted to live, and they chose me. Diana, however, was devastated and had plenty to say. She complained bitterly, claiming she had spent 18 years raising these children only for them to choose me over her. She was very harsh, accusing me of wanting to raise her kids only when the job was nearly done and telling me I should have stepped in earlier if I wanted to be their guardian. I was tempted to tell her that she hadn't really raised them, they had largely raised themselves. She was always out, whether working or going on dates with men who would leave her once they learned she had 3 kids. She lacked a sense of what she should prioritize, and it was clear why things turned out the way they did. The kids chose the person who had actually been there for them over someone who had tormented and rebuked them, driven by her own unhappiness and inability to find someone. She never realized that her actions were hurting them because she was hurting herself. But I decided not to rub it in her face, understanding that it must have been painful for her, which is why she lashed out at me. I kept my silence and let it be. After that, we had no contact. Her children decided to cut ties with her and move in with me. She chose to sever all connections with us, including our parents, who also stopped hearing from her. It was strange, as they hadn't done anything to provoke this. I think the fact that my parents and I didn't take her side when the kids chose to live with me really angered Diana, leading her to cut off all contact with us as well. It's been 7 years since then, and all of them are thriving. I honestly don't know what Diana is up to, but I do know that her children are doing exceptionally well. My nephew completed medical school and is now a pediatrician. One of my nieces has a degree in literature and is a teacher, while her twin sister runs her own hair salon. I helped them secure loans for their businesses and did my best to support them financially. I am incredibly proud of how far they've come, considering the difficult home environment they left behind. They all live separately now. They only stayed with me for 4 years, and even then, they were often away at college, returning home only occasionally. I think they didn't want to return to a place where they didn't feel welcomed, referring to Diana's home. It's been 2 years since they all moved out, and I couldn't be happier for them. I never expected anything in return for what I did, as I was simply doing what I believed was the right thing. They were just kids, and despite the bad blood with my sister, I could never be heartless towards them. I've always had a soft spot for them since I never had children of my own and never married. It just wasn't my path. I felt the need to be a parental figure for them, especially since their father was absent, and we all knew what kind of person Diana was. They needed someone, and my parents were too old for that role, so I stepped in. I never anticipated anything in return, but I'm grateful that they see my efforts as deserving of appreciation, even though I never thought I needed to be compensated for it. Last week, I celebrated my 48th birthday and had a wonderful time with friends and family, including my nieces and nephew. My nephew, who had organized everything, insisted on covering the expenses despite my offer to pay. After the party, the 3 of them sat me down for a conversation. They told me that they had discussed it, and now that they were financially stable, they wanted to show their gratitude by giving me a check collectively. I tried to explain that it wasn't necessary, as I am still working and financially capable of supporting myself. But they insisted that it wasn't about paying off a debt. They were sweet enough to tell me that they could never repay everything I had done for them, as the support and faith I had shown were invaluable and beyond any monetary value. This was their way of expressing their gratitude, a small token to show how much they appreciated everything I had done for them. I was deeply touched by their heartfelt gesture and decided to share it on social media, wanting to express my appreciation for them. My sister and I haven't been in touch for years, so I didn't think she would care or even notice. I was blocked on every platform, and I assumed she wouldn't see it, so I thought it was okay. Honestly, Diana never reached out to check on her children after they left home. It's true that they had cut ties with her first and moved in with me to get away from her, but that was partly her own doing. The least she could have done was show some interest in their lives and attempt to be a mother to them, trying to correct the mistakes she had made. But if I'm honest, it seemed like she didn't care much about the loss of contact, and I assumed she was doing just fine without them. A couple of days ago, I received a message from Diana, which I wasn't expecting given that we hadn't been in touch for 6 years. I should have anticipated that as soon as she realized her children were financially stable, she would come looking to see what she could get from them. In her message, she mentioned that she had seen my post and wanted to talk about her children. She admitted that she had messed up in the beginning and hadn't been a good mother to them, but now she wanted to rebuild a relationship with them. She said she wanted to give herself another chance as a mother, claiming she had missed them over the past 6 years. I found it hard to believe her statement, considering she hadn't made any effort to contact me in all that time. She asked me to talk to her kids and help bridge the gap between them, suggesting they respond well to me. The timing felt extremely suspicious, and I decided to ignore the message. I was infuriated by her apparent motives, which seemed so blatantly obvious. When I didn't respond to her message, Diana called me in the evening, and I finally lost my patience. She insisted that I talk to her children and help get them back in touch with her. I told her I wasn't going to do that because I knew exactly what she was after: their money. She didn't care about their well-being, she was just pretending to, in order to gain access to their finances. She had no genuine interest in being a mother again. If she truly regretted her past actions, she would have reached out to them directly, not through me. Her pride and ego were still in the way. She wanted them to reach out to her, despite being the one who had messed up. Her entitlement was astounding. She argued that she wasn't after their money and found it insulting that I would suggest such a thing. But I wasn't suggesting. I was certain, and her intentions were clear. I was disgusted by her manipulation. She then accused me of stealing everything from her children first, and now her fortune. I told her that I didn't need the money and had been initially hesitant about accepting the check, but I decided I wouldn't take it because she didn't deserve it. Now she's crying on social media and spreading her version of the story, trying to make me look like the bad guy. Some of my relatives think I went too far and that I seemed greedy, suggesting I owe her an apology, which is unbelievable. That's why I'm here, asking if I was wrong to tell my sister that she doesn't deserve the money her kids chose to give to me. Update 1. Hey, I talked about this incident with my nephew and nieces as some of you suggested. They mentioned that a couple of relatives had already discussed this with them, and they had been thinking about talking to me but hadn't found the time. After our conversation, they told me they believed I did the right thing. My nephew was very candid about his feelings, saying he had never seen his mother as a maternal figure. He always viewed me as the one who had been there for him since she had never been present in his life. My niece agreed with him. He has always been the most outspoken. It wasn't surprising that his thoughts were so clear. My nieces were too emotional to talk much, but he was angry and upset, saying Diana needed to speak to me because she had never even done the bare minimum. He pointed out that she had been receiving child support from their father, yet she constantly taunted them, making them feel bad just for existing. It wasn't their fault, which is true. They believe I did the right thing and have assured me that they won't get in touch with their mother, no matter what happens. They also feel that I should stand up for myself and share my side of the story online, especially since Diana is spreading negative things about me. They think social media is the best platform to get my message across. So I guess that's what I'm going to do. I'm really relieved that they are supporting me, especially since my parents have chosen to stay out of it and don't want to be involved. It's strange because Diana never reached out to them either after they cut ties with her. I find my parents' diplomatic approach odd too, given that they haven't been in touch with Diana for the past 6 years either. I was a bit disappointed by that, but at least my nieces and nephew are on my side. Regarding a question many people have asked me, why didn't I file for custody to take the children away from Diana if I knew she was a bad mother and wasn't treating them well? In my post, I mentioned that while her behavior wasn't right, it didn't rise to the level of torture, abuse, or neglect. She was just consistently mean to them and wasn't emotionally available. I could have filed for custody, but it was unlikely that I would have succeeded. Courts generally prefer to keep families together, and in this case, they had already lost their father, who had walked out on them. Their father had already exited their lives, leaving their mother as their only remaining biological parent. Naturally, the court would want to keep the family together. I knew that if I filed any petition or took legal action against Diana, she would make sure I never saw them again, and would take the kids far away from me. It was already unlikely that I could secure custody, so pursuing legal action would have just put them in a very risky situation. That's why I chose to play it safe by maintaining regular contact and being there for them. I'm not sure if it was the right decision in the long run, but it seemed like the only viable solution at the time. There might have been better ways to handle the situation, but this was the best option I could think of. It wasn't easy for me. I spent years considering whether to file for custody or find another way to remove them from her care. But I believed it was better for them to stay with their mother while having contact with me and my parents, rather than risk any further complications. I hope that answers most of the questions people had for me. I might come off as the bad guy for my decisions, but I don't really care. I know the kids are doing well now, and I did everything I could to keep them happy and safe. I was always there for them, so I have no reason to feel guilty about anything. Update 2. Hey, it's been a week since Diana's message, and today, I have been inundated with calls from relatives who have been talking to her. They've been telling me how wrong they think I am, which has been really exhausting, especially with work piling up. That's why I hadn't posted earlier, but today I decided I'd had enough. After a brief discussion with my nephew and nieces, I decided to share my side of the story. In doing so, I also wanted to share their side, as I don't think anyone in the family truly knows how much they endured in their childhood. They faced daily taunts and criticism because Diana had chosen to get pregnant young and abandoned everything for her boyfriend at the time. Even after that, she continued to blame others for her choices, pretending she was doing everything for her children, when in reality, she was never there for them. Since she's been spreading stories about how I stole her kids and am now taking a fortune from her now that they're financially successful, I felt it was important for people to hear the reality. not just her skewed version where she portrays herself as the victim rather than the person who tormented everyone. People were quick to judge me based on her side of the story and sympathized with her. But the truth is, I deserve to tell my side, along with her kids. I typed everything out a few hours ago and posted it. So far, she hasn't responded, but I've received messages from relatives who had previously judged me. Now they're apologizing, saying they judged me too quickly, but honestly, it doesn't mean much to me. I just wanted them to know the truth. I don't care what they think of me, but it was important to share how Diana treated her kids, which is why they are no longer in contact with her. Now that it's all out, I'm ready to move on. Honestly, I don't want anything to do with Diana anymore, and I've been perfectly happy for the past 6 years without her contact. I believe the same goes for her kids. I don't understand why she needed to create so much drama. If she wanted money, she could have just asked for it instead of pretending she wanted another chance at motherhood. Update 3. It's been a day since I posted, and today, Diana decided to respond. Instead of reaching out to me directly, she chose to continue her drama and started commenting on the post, trying to discredit me. But that was not going to work. As soon as she commented, her kids jumped in, reminding her of specific incidents from their childhood where she had been awful to them. This went on for about an hour, and honestly, I didn't feel bad about it, nor did anyone else. My nephew and nieces and I were all enjoying the process. They were thoroughly humiliating her, and there was no way she could lie her way out of this. Every attempt she made to make me look bad was quickly exposed. I'm glad I posted this on the weekend because it allowed us to respond swiftly. After an hour, she started deleting her comments to hide her lies, but it was too late. Many people had already seen the exchanges in the comments. She started getting called out by others for her behavior. As soon as she realized she was losing, she began deleting her comments and backtracking, and then she finally blocked me and her kids. I guess that was her way of surrendering, and I'm glad she did because in a confrontation with us, she would have definitely lost, morally and otherwise. I thought that would be the end of our interaction, but she decided to reach out to me personally. She sent a message saying she hoped I was happy now that I had painted her as the villain and that everyone hated her. I found that incredibly ironic, given that she started it all. She couldn't handle the consequences of her own actions. It's baffling why people start drama if they can't handle the fallout. Anyway, I ignored her message, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Ignore her for the rest of our lives. She has proven she's not worth our attention.